People ask me that question all the time.
There's the side that we can talk about artistically, and then there is a side that Ruth Ellen takes care of, which is the dollar signs, right? What we can afford, actually. So it's a very good question.
I guess a bass orchestra is 72, I would say. That would be my answer.
Okay. It also depends what orchestra. We could talk about full symphony or chamber orchestra.
Right.
Chamber meaning smaller, kind of a room size orchestra. It could be up to 12 people, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 100 if we start playing a big Mahler symphonies that require 100 people plus. Then you can put a choir behind that adds to another 200, so it could be 500 people on stage easy, right? Well, you have done such a thing.
The music really dictates.
Yes, it's the music or the composer who wrote the music actually dictates how many players that particular piece requires. Usually a full string section, and then back there when we have the oboes and the bassoons and horns, there is a particular requirement by the composer how many of these are asked for. So it can totally vary from 35 to 80 and somewhere
90.
between 90, 100 sometimes. Yeah. So it really depends on the piece.
I think, the whole point of that is that there's an idea of what orchestra is, but orchestra generally is a living, breathing organism, which changes repertoire-wise, different parts of history, musical history. I mean, some instruments from the 1600s wouldn't have been used then because they weren't fully developed or developed at all. So if we're talking about music from that particular period, we're talking about a much smaller orchestra with fewer numbers. And those are the things that we consider as being a conductor or being music directors in regards to what it requires to put an orchestra together. Mm-hmm. A Haydn orchestra is probably very different from Mahler.
Right.
Obviously.
Because the requirements were different. Also, back then, let's say the music was supported by a big, let's say the count of
That's right.
And so he would say, well, we can afford this much and we would have this size. Or they couldn't fit it into the church. It's possible they couldn't fit more than 25. So Haydn just wrote it for that particular group, right? And he just whipped it overnight. He wrote that symphony in 24 hours and said, okay, 24 people, let's play. Yeah. So there's a lot of limitations too. But
we are considering doing Harry Potter in the future, and that requires 90 musicians.
Yes, that's John Williams, right? And he wrote for a big orchestra. Yeah. Seems like modern composers tend to require bigger ensembles. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as
they love the bombastic sound.
Well, and as we've gotten through music and history, things have changed. More things have become available. It's a larger palette that you can paint with. I mean, you're a painter. You understand it from that visual, not only musical, but also visual aspect as well. So you get that sonic and also visual. I mean, basically, that's what orchestra is.
Yeah, interestingly enough, painting a big painting is actually easier than painting a smaller. So you could, to perform a Shostakovich symphony is to a degree easier than doing a Mozart symphony really well, which requires a smaller orchestra.
You're right. I mean, maybe not from the administrative aspect of it, but there is that duality. You're right.
Artistic.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, those more intimate orchestral palettes are far more exposed, and there is a duality between our sonic and visual representation there.
There was a harpist coming from Houston, all the way driving with her harp. For concerts, that's a 10-hour drive, right?
If you play harp, I think they get used to the drive because there's so few people who do harp.